Here is the part nobody talks about, not the staying home. Everybody knows about staying home. The part nobody talks about is what happens right after. You canceled, or you left early, or you just let the evening be what you needed it to be, quiet, alone yours, and it felt right, in your body, in the specific way that things feel right when they fit the thing you actually are. And then, almost immediately, you start to feel bad about feeling right. That specific double movement, the relief followed by the guilt, is the thing I want to talk about today, not the preference, the shame of the preference. The question you ask yourself every single time this happens: why can't I just be normal about this? You have been asking that question for a long time, maybe your whole adult life. And the answer you've been giving yourself, some version of I am just not a people person, or I must be broken in some small way, is not the right answer. Let me give you the right one. Because here is what I can tell you before this video goes any further. The reason you feel that relief when you cancel, and the reason that relief is always followed by guilt, is not a character flaw. It is not laziness. It is not a fear of connection. It is not you being difficult or antisocial or failing at adulthood. It is your nervous system doing something extraordinarily specific. And once you understand what it is actually doing, two things happen. The relief starts to make complete sense. And the guilt that has been living on top of the relief every single time, loses most of its power. By the time this video ends, the next time that second voice shows up, the one that asks what is wrong with you, you're going to have a very different answer ready. A biological one, a real one. Stay with me. What actually happens when you go out? Let me walk you through what is really happening inside you when you go to a social event. Not what it looks like from outside, what it actually costs. You arrive, you walk in, and the moment you cross the threshold, your brain starts working, not in a dramatic way, just in the specific way it works when it enters a social environment. It begins tracking who is in the room, what the energy is like, whether there is any tension, which conversations are happening, what people's faces are doing, whether the person you just said hello to is genuinely pleased to see you or performing pleased, whether the group dynamic shifted when you arrived, whether anyone seems upset about something unrelated to this room that they're carrying into it. You are doing all of this in the background, automatically, before you have even taken your coat off. And then the conversation starts. And now your brain is tracking even more what this person is saying, what they mean underneath what they are saying, what the right response is, whether your response landed the way you intended, what their face did after you said it, whether you should add something or let it breathe, whether that pause was comfortable or whether it meant something. Every interaction is running at this level. Every person you speak to, every room you move through, every moment that requires you to be present and engaged and reading the situation correctly. Most people do not experience social environments this way. For them, a conversation is mostly just a conversation. They are not simultaneously processing 8 layers of subtext and tracking for other people across the room. They are just talking. For you, the social environment is a high-cost operating state. Your nervous system has 2 basic modes. The first mode is the alert state, the one that costs energy. Heart rate goes up, attention narrows and sharpens. The body is running at a higher level than normal. This is the state your body enters when it is dealing with demand. Social environments are demand, not threat, demand. But your nervous system does not fully distinguish between the two in terms of what it costs. The second mode is a recovery state. When your body finally exhales, heart rate slows down, muscles let go, breathing deepens. Your body comes back to its natural resting point. This is the state your body is always trying to return to when it has been running high. Here's the thing about people like you. The recovery state is what home feels like. Not because home is special, not because you are hiding from anything, because home is an environment where your nervous system is finally allowed to drop back to baseline. The alert mode switches off, the tracking stops, the performance ends, and the specific weight that you carry in social environments, the cost of all that processing, starts to lift. The exhale when you walk through the door is not relief that something bad is over. It is your nervous system finally being allowed to stop running at a cost. It was never designed to run it continuously. That is not laziness. That is biology. And when you understand the biology, the guilt starts to look like exactly what it is, a response to something you were told you should want, rather than something you actually did wrong. But wait, because there is something even more specific going on. And this is the part that explains why this happens more intensely for you than for other people in the same room. The 20%. Approximately 15 to 20% of people are built with a more finely tuned nervous system than the other 80%. Not more sensitive in the way people use that word as an insult. More finely tuned in the way a precision instrument is more finely tuned than a standard one. More detail comes in. More gets processed. More is held in awareness at once. A psychologist named Elaine Aron spent years studying this specific trait. She found that people with this kind of nervous system do not simply process more information. They process it more deeply. They register things others miss. They hold more variables in awareness simultaneously. They pick up on emotional undercurrents in a room before those undercurrents have been named by anyone. They notice the quality of silence, the weight of a word choice, the small shift in someone's energy that most people walk right past. And here is something important about this trait. It appears across species, not just in humans, in fruit flies, in deer, in horses, in fish. Roughly the same percentage of each species shows the same pattern of deeper, more careful processing, which tells you something. This is not a defect that slipped through the filter of evolution. This is a trait that evolution kept. That means it serves a function. At some point in human history, and probably still, having some members of a group who process the environment more carefully, who notice more, who catch the subtle signals that others miss, was worth the cost. But it does come with a cost. When you walk into a loud, crowded room, your nervous system is doing significantly more work than the person standing next to you. Not more emotional work, more neurological work. More sensory input is coming in. More is being registered and held. More social information is being processed simultaneously. The same room that feels manageable to most people is genuinely, physically, more expensive for your nervous system to process. The fatigue you feel after a social event is not weakness. It is proportional. You burn more. Of course you are more tired. Of course the recovery takes longer. Of course the pull toward home is stronger. Pay attention to this, because it changes the entire frame of what going home actually means. Going home is not retreat. Going home is not failure. Going home is not you being unable to handle what other people handle easily. Going home is restoration. You cannot maintain something you do not understand, but now you understand it. And what the data says is simple. Your nervous system is doing more work per hour in a social environment than most people's nervous systems do. Going home and letting it recover is not indulgence. It is maintenance of a high-functioning piece of equipment that works harder than most. But here is where it gets even more interesting. Because while you are at home, while your nervous system is recovering, and most people assume you're doing nothing, your brain is actually running some of its most important operations. What your brain is actually doing at home. This is the part of the video that tends to surprise people the most. And I want you to really sit with it. When you are alone at home, sitting quietly, not particularly doing anything, not performing or engaging or tracking, most people assume your brain is resting, that it has gone into a kind of low-power standby mode, that you are doing less. You're not doing less. Scientists who study the brain have found that there's a set of connected brain regions that becomes most active specifically during quiet, undirected states, not during task performance, not during social engagement, during rest, during daydreaming, during the kind of diffuse, unfocused mental state you move into when the external demands go quiet and your mind is left to itself. They call this the default mode network. And the name is misleading because it sounds like a backup system, the thing that runs when nothing important is happening. It is not. It is one of the most important and sophisticated operations your brain runs. And it only fully activates when you are alone and quiet. Here's what it does. It consolidates memory, all the experiences of the day, the conversations, the things that happened, the things you learned, the emotions you moved through. Your brain sorts and files and integrates all of it during this quiet mode, the brain's version of saving the day's work. This process is seriously disrupted if it never gets the quiet time it needs to run, which is one of the reasons people who are chronically overstimulated, who never get real solitude, often feel like their head is full, because the filing never happens. It processes your own inner life. In the quiet, your brain turns toward itself. It examines your own motivations. It works on understanding who you are and why you do what you do. It builds an internal narrative that makes you feel like a coherent person with coherent life. This is not navel-gazing. This is one of the ways the brain builds psychological stability. People who never have solitude often report a growing sense of disconnection from themselves. Not because they are isolated, but because the brain's self-understanding processes never get time to run. It makes creative connections. The non-linear, surprising connections between unrelated ideas, the kind that produce raw insight rather than just analysis. These happen primarily during this quiet mode, not during focus work, during mental wandering, during the state that looks from the outside like doing nothing. In short, the quiet hours at home are not empty time. They are some of the most productive hours your brain has. When you go home early, when you cancel and spend the evening in the quiet, when you choose the couch over the party, your brain is not shutting down. It is doing things it cannot do anywhere else. The culture tells you that solitude is absence, the absence of socializing, the absence of full life, the absence of doing something real. The science says the opposite. Solitude is not what is missing. Solitude is what makes everything else possible. But there is something even more specific about why home feels different to you than it does to most people. And it comes down to something as simple as a volume dial. The volume dial. There's a concept I want you to understand because it is probably the clearest explanation of your experience that you will ever hear. Every nervous system has an optimal level of stimulation. Not too quiet, not too loud. A range where things feel right, where you feel engaged but not overwhelmed, present but not pushed past your limit. Below that range and life feels flat. Above it and life feels like too much. Inside it, things feel manageable and good. Think of it as a volume dial. Everyone has one, and everyone's dial has a sweet spot, the range where the volume feels right. Here is the critical difference. Not everyone's dial starts at the same position. For people whose nervous systems sit on the lower end, people who need more stimulation to feel engaged, social environments turn the dial up into the sweet spot. The noise, the activity, the multiple conversations, the energy of other people, all of it increases stimulation and it feels good, energizing. They arrive at a party, running a little quiet, and leave running fuller. For people whose nervous systems sit on the higher end, people who are already closer to their upper limit before the social event even starts, the same environment turns the dial past the sweet spot. The noise that was energizing for the person next to them is too loud. The activity that refreshed their friend is more than they needed. They arrive already near the top of their comfortable range, and the social environment pushes them over it. Past optimal does not feel like too much fun. It feels like overwhelm wearing the mask of exhaustion. It feels like the urgent need to leave dressed up as boredom. It feels like the desire to be somewhere quieter framed as being antisocial. It is none of those things. It is your dial going past the point where things feel manageable. Going home turns it back down. This is not running away. This is turning the volume back to where your brain actually functions well. This is not a preference you should try to override. Your optimal range is your optimal range. You did not choose it. You cannot train yourself to function well above it. You can push through it. But pushing through it costs something, and what it costs is a recovery time that follows. The Sunday spent unable to do anything because Saturday exceeded your actual capacity. And here is the thing that nobody says clearly enough. Your optimal range is not a flaw in the design. It is a design. You were built with this range. It is specific to you. And a life that fits inside that range, quieter, more intentional, more selective about where your energy goes, is not a smaller life. It is the life your brain is actually capable of inhabiting fully. The extrovert who fills every night is not living more than you. They are living at their range. You are living at yours. Neither is better. but one of them has been told for years that theirs is the right way to do it. Which brings us to the question that has probably been sitting underneath all of this from the moment you press play. Why do you feel guilty about something your own nervous system clearly needs? Where the shame came from, it did not come from inside you. I want to say that very clearly before I explain where it did come from. The guilt you feel when you cancel. The voice that says what is wrong with you when you choose the quiet evening over the social one. The low-grade belief that your preferences are a problem to be managed. None of that originated in you. It was placed there, and it was placed there by a culture that built its operating norms around a specific type of nervous system. The type that gains energy from social environments, that thrives on stimulation, that finds a party restorative. Everything about how modern life works was designed for that nervous system. The ideal employee is visible, collaborative, present in the open plan office. The ideal friend is available and responsive and always up for things. The ideal partner shows up to every event, meets everyone's family, and performs enthusiasm convincingly. The ideal adult social life is full and active and shared and documented. Staying home, preferring quiet, needing recovery, choosing fewer things more carefully. These are framed consistently and completely as failures, as deficit, as something wrong with the person who needs them. And you absorbed this framing. Of course you did. It was everywhere. It came from well-meaning parents who worried you were too quiet, from teachers who wrote on report cards that you needed to participate more, from friends who said you were no fun when you left early, from a culture that celebrates the social, the present, the energetic, and treats the quiet as a problem to solve. None of them were trying to damage you, but the message that landed was damage all the same. The way I naturally am is wrong. Now here's what that message actually costs you in real terms every single day. When your nervous system sends you an honest signal, I am getting close to my limit, go at home with help, and you override that signal because you feel guilty about listening to it, you pay a cost. The energy of the override, the performance of the extroversion you do not feel, the specific tiredness of being in an environment past your range for longer than your biology recommended. And then when you finally do go home, when you finally listen, you pay again the guilt of having done the right thing for yourself, the voice that tells you failed somehow, the shame of the relief. You paid twice, once in energy, once in peace. And the guilt, the second payment, did not protect you from anything. It did not make the next party better. It did not make you more socially comfortable. It just cost you your peace on top of your energy, for no return. The shame was never protecting you. The shame was the story you absorbed, running in the background, charging you for every choice that fit your actual nervous system instead of the nervous system the culture decided was normal. Here is the truth, the version of you that says yes to everything and pushes through and performs social engagement they do not feel. That version is not thriving. They are managing. They are getting through. And Sunday they are barely functional because Saturday was too much and the recovery has nowhere to go because Monday is already coming. That is not a full life. That is an expensive one. The shame was never yours. It was borrowed, and you do not have to keep paying interest on a debt you never chose. What it means for how you live. This is not just about canceling plans. This is about something larger. Every time you apologize for leaving a party early, you are apologizing for listening to your own nervous system. Every time you over-explain why you need a quiet weekend, you're defending a basic human requirement, as if it were a character flaw. Every time you say yes to something you already know will cost you more than you have, and then spend the following day recovering instead of living, you are choosing the story you were given over biology you actually have. You do not have to do that anymore. The quiet evening at home is not you opting out of your life. It is you inhabiting the version of your life that actually fits you. There is a difference between a life that is quieter and a life that is smaller. The quiet life and the small life are not the same thing. One is a scale, the other is a shape. Your life can be deeply meaningful, richly connected, creatively full, and also quiet. It can have the right people in it rather than the most people. It can involve choosing how you spend your energy rather than spending it reflexively to meet someone else's idea of what a well-adjusted person's calendar looks like. Think about the specific choices this changes. The dinner you said yes to because you felt obligated and spent the whole time counting hours until you could leave, you can say no to that. Not because you are antisocial, because your nervous system's time is finite, and that dinner was not worth what it cost. The Sunday you spent recovering from a Saturday you did not actually want to do, you can protect that Sunday. Spend it doing the things that refill you rather than the things that drain you. Not because you are avoiding life, because recovery is not wasted time. It is the time that makes everything else possible. The habit of explaining and justifying and apologizing for your preferences, you can put that down. Your nervous system does not need defending. It needs understanding. You now have the understanding. That is enough. Here is what the people who understand this about themselves tend to have. They have a smaller number of social commitments, and they are present for all of them. They are not there while mentally checking out. They are not calculating the exit while pretending to enjoy the entrance. They are actually there because they chose to be there, because they had the energy to be there, because they protected enough of themselves to bring something real into the room. They have a few close relationships that work, rather than many surface ones that cost more than they give. They have creative and intellectual lives that are genuinely alive, because the deep thinking part of their brain gets the quiet time it needs to actually run. And they have Sundays, full ones, not spent in recovery from a life being lived at a volume that was always too high. That is not the consolation prize. That is the actual prize. You are not lazy. That needs to be said one more time, clearly, before this ends. You are not antisocial. You are not broken. You do not have a fear of people. You are not failing at adulthood. You have a nervous system that works at a higher cost in social environments than most. You have a brain that does some of its most important work in the quiet. You have an optimal range for stimulation that sits higher than average, which means the same social environments that recharge other people push you past your limit. All of that is real. All of it is biological. None of it required your apology. And the shame that arrives right after the relief, the voice that has been asking what is wrong with you for years, that voice was never telling you the truth. It was telling you a story about what a normal, healthy, well-adjusted person is supposed to want. That story was not written for your nervous system. It was written for a different one. You have been trying to live inside a story that was never about you. And every time you chose what you actually needed and then felt guilty for it, you were doing two things at once: listening to your biology and punishing yourself for listening. You can stop punishing yourself now. The next time that second voice shows up, right after the relief, right after you chose quiet evening over the loud one, you can answer with something true. Nothing is wrong with me. My nervous system just knows what it needs. And the question worth sitting with is not why you prefer home. The question worth sitting with is why you ever believed that preference needed a defense. Drop a comment if any part of this describes something you have felt for years without ever having the right words for it. The specific part, not a general comment. The specific moment in this video where something landed. That comment might be the thing someone else needed to read today. And subscribe if you want more. Every week, same depth, same honesty.